A very good morning.
Good morning, gangster.
Electricity is concerned. I'll go with you, Engineer Nsuga. Should have started with the lady in Dr. Litho, but let me start with you, Engineer Nsuga. Just paint for us broadly the picture of the Karuma hydropower project as we stand today.
Thank you, Simon, and again, thanks to the gangsters and the listeners. A hydropower project is a project to develop a hydropower plant, a hydropower station with the purpose of generating electricity. Normally, these are built across rivers. You go and dam a river, you build a civil structure across a river, you divert the water, and you use that water to generate electricity by using it to turn turbines which run generators. So this is all technology behind it. Use water as a mover, as a force, as a fuel to turn turbines, which in turn generators, and generators generate electricity that is transformed and distributed to the grid. So Karuma hydropower project is not a new project in the Ugandan books of projects. It's a project that has been envisaged long ago, because many of the projects on the Nile had been envisaged long before even the 2000s. These are projects that had been envisaged in the hydropower master plan of the 1998 or even before that, by previous governments, because the Nile is endowed with a lot of waterfalls, which means there's the ability to generate electricity because the water has force. So Karuma hydropower project initially was supposed to be developed as a 200 megawatt project by the Norwegians. There was a company called Nopak which was interested in developing this but along the way in the mid-2000s they lost interest in the project, and government took it up redesigned it from 200 megawatts to 600 megawatts.
Wow.
By making sure that now it was not going to be on the surface, but it was going to be underground. And by doing that, the studies took place in 2009, 2010, and eventually by 2013, government was able to contract Chinese company Sino Hydro Corporation Limited under an engineering, procurement, construction, and financing model to be able to construct this under the supervision of another consultant.
Usually you have an acronym for that, EPCC or something like that.
EPC plus F. That is the acronym. So this 2013 December, the construction commences. That 16th of December. Was supposed to end after 5 years, but we faced a lot of challenges, which I'm sure we shall discuss along the way. But we are glad that come August, when August came this year, we were able to complete, and come next week we should be able to have a political commissioning of the project. Thank you very much, Simon.
When you talk about a political commissioning, what exactly are we talking about? Are you saying that the hydropower plant is already working technically, and then what you're doing is a photo op or the presence of a president to also make some kind of, well...
Absolutely. You see, commissioning is a process. It's a amalgamation of tests. So many different tests that go in there to make sure the machines are working. Mm-hmm. So we do what we call dry commissioning, wet commissioning. Initially, you test the machines before you allow the water to go. Before you sink them, you drown them in the water. Mm-hmm. Then eventually you open the tunnels, you allow the water to go in. Then you test them again for how they are performing. All these are commissioning tests. Then you now allow them to start connecting to the national grid, and you commission. These are technical commissioning tests that will go. So all those we did, and by the 12th of June this year, we issued what we call certificate of completion, which is a sign that the employer, who is the Ministry of Energy and the government of Uganda, is satisfied with the work that has been done and supervised by the implementing agencies, that's Uganda Electricity Generation Company and the Transmission Company Limited, and therefore the contractor deserves the certificate of completion. That ushers the project into what we call a defects liability period, but also enables you to pay what you call the retention money that you had been holding before. Now, once everything is okay, and you have tested and you're happy and the technical people are happy, it is time now to bring the leaders
to take credit.
Yeah, absolutely, because they are the brains behind these projects.
So let's put it very clear before I move on to the next person. You're saying right now, even here at Capital, we possibly are using electricity, part of which generated from Karuma.
Yes, absolutely. Karuma is a 600 megawatt power plant. That is the officially licensed capacity, but actually it's a 660 megawatt, because each generator in Karuma can produce up to 110 megawatts. It's the largest in Uganda. It is producing power. I was there a few days ago, and we're generating power into the grid. So we have tested all the 6 units. We have tested all the 600 megawatts. We can generate power, and as I speak, part of the light that you see here is coming from Karuma through Kawanda substation.
Wow. So we have a transmission line running from Karuma to Kawanda, another one running from Karuma to Orio, that's in West Nile, and another running up to Lira. I'll turn to Dr. Litho before I get down to the gangsters. Of course, we know that the hydropower project is certainly, without a doubt, one that's supposed to give us that much needed relief in terms of our electricity supply. However, we've been told that there have been some, social aspects to the project. That what used to be a sleepy little stopover town called Karuma, maybe very lucky to have 50 truck drivers spending the night waiting for the bridge to open in the morning, a few prostitutes here and there, and people selling maize by the roadside. Now Karuma has turned into a bustling metropolis with, with a mixed crop of business taking place and taking shape. One wants to understand that from the word go, when government is designing these projects, what normally is your focusing as far as the social aspect is concerned in the areas where these projects are? And what transformation socially has Karuma made in that area, or is going to make?
I think Karuma socially benefits the immediate community, but also the country at a bigger scale. So starting with the community, obviously the opportunity is always availed with any project. So a project of that magnitude doesn't only create employment, but also business opportunities, which also comes with additional employment. So from a sleepy town, like you said initially, It is a bus of activities. One of the few Uganda words I know is that it has created what we call omujuzo. You know, like everybody's moving into that place. Entertainment is growing. Health centers, the schools are more vibrant. The businesses are more vibrant. There's nightlife. There's accommodation. Something that was not the case before. So obviously creates opportunities. But also government came aware that it also has social responsibilities. So to enhance the quality of livelihoods in the place, there are a number of things that the project were able to deliver. For instance, putting up some religious institutions, like renovating and putting up churches and mosques, schools, health centers, but even the neighboring districts that would automatically a part of the project, because the immediate district is Kiriandongo, but we have the Masindis, we have Nuoya, that have the other components of the interconnection.
True.
So they've also benefited from this project. So we've paid attention to that. I know some of the most exciting things about this project are the kind of races we have created. But you know, where the world is going, there's a lot of intermarriages, and it comes with that. And fortunately or unfortunately, when humans interact, regardless of the skin of their color, they're likely to create other humans. So sometimes that's another thing, which for me is a beautiful thing, a story of love. Maybe the men took off or whatever agreement they came into. And this is fronted. For me, we are stigmatizing these children because we have so many mixed race people in this country. As a result of the East African Railway, we have a lot of Arab mixed race people. We have a lot of European mixed people in this country, especially Eastern Uganda. If you come from Tororo, Iganga, Jinja, we have a lot of this kind of people. So when Karuma has mixed race children of Chinese origin, I don't know why it's looked at as something different. Yes, the other dynamics of how these babies were made and who ran away from their responsibility obviously ought to be paid attention to. But having mixed race people, I mean, is a common phenomenon in the world. So I just thought I needed to mention that because sometimes this is one of the areas that we get excited about. I know engineer was vying away from the challenges, but I would just like to mention the other challenge of the project affected persons in terms of the land compensation. We had some people suing us because they were not satisfied with the amount of money we're offering. We had some people who are able to identify that this actually belonged to them. Of course, it's understandable because of the land system there. Most of it is customary land, but there has to be some
title and things
exactly. And of course, the area is coming out of war, so sometimes it's hard to identify people. So we have those challenges that carry on. We've resolved some, we haven't resolved others. Others have come up to write to the president in the recent past once they heard about the commissioning. But the strange thing, this is the same team in court, so we allow court take its natural process. But otherwise, for the country, it's an amazing project, contributing to socio-economic development, contributing to stable power. There's a lot of complaint about load shedding, but there's so many things that cause load shedding. So to me, it's a beautiful thing because the reason of load shedding should not be because the country has insufficient power. It might be because maybe of an old network that we're also refurbishing. So I'm sure in the next 2-3 years, we are going to be in a much better place. With even yesterday, the minister groundbreaking for the Metropolitan project, for the transmission line. So generally,
which
we are
minister?
moving.
Your Minister of Energy?
The Minister of Energy and Mineral Development. I apologize, Honorable Nankabira. So basically, the sector is doing its best to ensure the government has stable and reliable power, which contributes to all these different industrial parks that we are creating. We have the minerals and factories and the value addition that the president keeps emphasizing. They all need power. So you might find the 2,000 we are so excited about might also become insufficient. So of course the government has other plans of bringing on board other projects. Some are ongoing, some are under feasibility study.
And that's where Nsubuga will be telling us what is in the pipeline. But before I let you off the hook as Ministry of Energy, I just need to turn back to Engineer Nsubuga and ask him, because when we talk about Karuma, in the court of public opinion, one thing comes out very glaringly, at least that many remember, and the word is cracks. So you talked about all these commissioning tests that you have carried out and you feel you're satisfied, but the ordinary Ugandan on the street may want to just ask that one question in a very high specificity. The cracks.
Yeah,
fixed or not fixed?
Simon, the cracks have been fixed. This was largely a major problem in 2016. Yeah. Karuma is quite a hot place. If you've been there, it's really quite very hot. In the dry season, it gets really hot around that place.
It actually hits highs of about 35 degrees.
We suffered something that we call heat of hydration. As concrete tries to dry, and it's possible that it could lead to cracks. And you've seen in some of your structures at home when you build, because of the drying conditions, you may face what we call heat of hydration in engineering. But that will resolve. We introduce ice plants, and we mixed ice with the concrete so that we control how fast the concrete cools. So yes, while there are some issues with the cracks, yes, in 2016 largely we had that problem. We paused a bit, we sought solutions, but now we don't have that problem anymore. We resolved it. It was an engineering challenge. For us as engineers, that was a good opportunity to learn something else and to improve and to learn what we should do next, the next construction of this large-scale civil system. So, Simon, I want to give comfort to the listeners that we don't have a problem of cracks at Karuma. There are no civil challenges of that sort anymore. And this power plant is good and it's producing power as intended initially. Thank you.
There's a way Dr. Sarah Birete is looking at you with a lot of cynicism. Of course, it's expected from her because she questions everything and doesn't take anything without a pinch of salt. So Dr. Birete, you're looking at Engineer Nsubuga with this look of, is he actually saying the truth? And if he's saying the truth, is he saying all the truth? So I'll put it down to you. Don't you feel a sense of excitement that finally we have a huge project of this magnitude? And by the way, I have to add and inform you that the Karuma hydropower project is the biggest civil engineering project this country has embarked on, only rivaled by the Uganda Railway.
Well, it's both exciting, but I'm sure many citizens out there have questions. Not because we don't appreciate, but questions asking whether the situation will be better. Of recent, we have experienced a lot of road shedding as citizens. Both in, yes, I have an office in Ntinda, Minister's Village. I stay in Sonde. Both areas can go through 24-hour road shedding, and this is what I'm talking about. We have had to procure backups. Like long before, we thought we had overcome this situation of long hours of road shedding. We have had to increase backup for office power. Even at home, you have to increase backup, otherwise you sleep in darkness, and then there are lots of pet thieves and everything. So this is the situation as a citizen. As they were talking that Karuma is already powering to the national grid, I was like, okay, have I seen a difference as a citizen? I haven't. And I don't know why, where the challenge is.
That you used to iron these clothes you're wearing this morning would possibly have come from Karuma.
But away from that, the energy sector is very important because it's a fulcrum of our economy. And I'm looking at SDG 7. When you go to the Sustainable Development Goal 7, universal access to electricity and clean cooking, where are we? When you look at the consumption, I don't know whether it has changed, but the latest data I have is 22.1 nationwide, 57.2 consumers in urban areas and 10% in the rural. This is data for last year. I don't know whether it has changed. You will guide us. That's why we are here. And when it comes to clean cooking, we have less than 5% as a country using clean cooking amid this climate change, disasters. Increasing heat. I just came from Juba. I don't know whether I should have carried clothes to Juba or not. I know it's hotter than here, but even us, we have temperatures rising. So we can best mitigate our climate, adaptation measures by going green, by clean cooking, by smart options for climate change. And I would like to hear the contribution of Karuma and the dam that will be commissioned next week. What is the contribution to our climate adaptation as a country, and how do we increase the people that are using power and make power affordable for cooking? Because even us, urban dwellers, sometimes you find that you can't cook on power because of the costs. So does it change the costs for an ordinary citizen?
Sarah, Beautiful submission there and incredible questions, and I believe that Engineer Subuga and Dr. Litho have taken note of this, and they will be certainly giving us the ones and zeros or the figures in as far as the questions you ask, especially with regard to SDG 7, which talks about universal access to electricity. So we cannot be here waxing lyrical about the commissioning of a new power plant. We are calling it a masterstroke of engineering genius, but the situation on the ground doesn't seem to reflect that. We still have load shedding in places, we still have accessibility questions, and we also have, most importantly, affordability questions in as far as the electricity is concerned, but also the footprint, our green footprint in as far as climate change and mitigation of which is concerned. We just had the arrival of Honorable Lydia Wanyoto, who's joined us. She's a regular gangster on the program. Good morning and welcome to the program, ma'am.
Good morning, Simon, and good morning to my colleagues in the gang and to the listeners. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I bring you greetings from Mbale City.
Welcome.
Yes.
And yes, we're happy to hear from you. Now, Ofonopondo, you've been looking on gleefully, and you have this mischievous smile you're giving me. One wonders why you're looking at me like that. But what, from your side, do you have to say about finally the commissioning of Karuma? And I need you to also throw a bit of a spanner in the works. Let's be honest here. You know that you talked about this project when it was groundbroken in December of 2013, and this should have been a 5-year project. That means it should have been commissioned in 2018. We are now in 2024, which means it's 6 years later.
Yeah.
From where you stand as a person that promised politically the constituency called Uganda that you will have a power plant, and now you're commissioning it 6 years late. What does that say about our project delivery timelines and everything in between?
Well, first of all, let me respond a bit to my sister Sarah Birete. While schools teach huge syllabus, when you go for examination, it is narrowed. I thought today the discussion is about Karuma and particularly commissioning. And therefore we can discuss specifically the challenges, opportunities, and the way forward for Karuma. We can broaden a little about the energy sector, but I think it would mix up. I don't think we can have the time. If we broaden and say, you want to discuss everything, SDGI, whatever, I think it will be unfair.
Are you scared by
No,
the
I'm not.
SDG?
No, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I thought as a doctor, Dr. Birete, you should know when we set exams, you only answer the parameter of the question. And the question today was commissioning of Karuma. Anyway.
Dr. Vedes, you have my protection.
Yes.
O is not going to usurp the role of a moderator and gag you on the extent which you want to go on the subject matter.
Thank you very much.
You see, we just don't discuss for ourselves in the studio. We discuss for the general, for the listeners out there. Mm-hmm. Now, I think in this studio, I've been privileged to be the oldest by age, but also
the longest serving gangster here.
Serving, I'm making now 24 years on the gang. By December, I would make 24 years on the gang. But above all, traveled around the country, well traveled, particularly Karuma direction. I first went to northern Uganda in 1988 as a young officer. What you call Karuma town wasn't a town. I don't think there was even a shop, a single shop. Later, a shop came there selling groceries when war broke out, and the government closed the Karuma because of the rebellion in northern Uganda. And to cross Karuma Bridge, because this Karuma we're talking about is astride Karuma Bridge, is on when you are going northern Uganda, is on the right-hand side, yes, the bigger part. Now, because of that closure, it required military escorts. And so you needed to wait on either side. So that's how Karuma, the town, the trading center began. Somebody who goes there today, 30 years later or more, will be amazed about with the exponential expansion. It started from the bad side, but has now become a good thing. that Karuma is now a huge town council with a lot of potential. The Karuma Dam in particular crosses Kiriandongo, goes to Oyam district. And so the growth
and parts of Nwoya.
Because as you may know, there is a substation in Oluyo. Oluyo, which is next to Porongo. Porongo and Oluyo are now town council actually. And when you go there, you can see again what's going on. In Oluyo and Porongo, I think they are going to rival a little town in terms of cottage industries, particularly for processing, agro-processing, that Porongo. Again, courtesy of the power structure that's coming up there. Now, I have had also the opportunity of actually visiting and touring Karuma Dam project. I think I've gone there twice. So I have seen it from inception to almost the completion. I was there, I think, in October 2023 or thereabout. And so when you're talking about the 6-year delay, there are many factors, and the government has explained this before. Part of the reason which Engineer Subuga talked about, NOPAC, you remember the quarrels we have had from the 6th Parliament, where it was alleged that some members of Parliament in the Committee of National Economy took some money. And part of that's the actual part of the reason the Norwegians abandoned the project, because they were being accosted by our local politicians here and probably civil servants, I don't know. But at least what came out was were the politicians on the Committee of National Economy. And then eventually the government went out looking for a new investor. And because of international geopolitics, China was just emerging. I think the Western group did not see kindly that a project of this magnitude should be done by China. You know what that means. And so there were a lot of complications. You remember World Bank refused to fund because they say we can't give our money to the Chinese. That's part of the reason. Issues of funding. We don't have our own money. Even the money to pay projects affected persons. And then, of course, the issue later referred to about land tenure system. Part of this land actually on the Kiriandongo side and also the Nwoya side, because it's
just for clarity's sake.
Nwoya.
What's the project cost? We're talking about $1.7 billion.
1.688 billion, but that includes 1.4 for the power plant and then 289 for the transmission lines.
Yes.
I just need those figures for both understanding.
Now remember, it is Kiriandongo, Nwoya, and Oyam. But it's also in the midst of a national game park. And remember the flow of the water in the river, then the international environmentalists. You remember
Ken politics.
Ken Ucham's the man. They petitioned and said we cannot have a dam over the river fall. In the midst of the national park, the conservationists came up. And remember, we had to fight that battle more or less like what we are going through in the Adbatine over oil.
With
ECOP. And so it went on and on and on and on and on. And when you have those complaints, international financiers will be skeptical to bring in their money and so on and so forth. So that explains part of the delay. And of course, most recently, we entered into 2.5 years or 3 of global lockdown because of COVID and so on. So that partly explains the delay. Of course, there are local issues, our own internal maleficence as a government, that you don't do due diligence quite often, and so on and so on. So that explains the delay. But anyway.
Why do I get the sense that what would be the most important thing that we need to address or talk about is what you're trying to quickly sweep under the carpet?
I'm not sweeping
under the carpet. Internal maleficences of government.
Yes.
It is those issues that actually bother us as taxpayers, as citizens.
Like you yourself have said that this is the biggest civil works project after the Uganda railways.
Starting from Mombasa.
From Mombasa. Now, since we built the Uganda railways, I'm using us, we, Ugandans or even Africans, which other projects of that magnitude have you had? So therefore, did you have the requisite expertise on the different issues? Let us just talk about land valuation.
True.
This is the first time. You remember previously the government of Uganda never used to compensate citizens for land for public works.
Public good, yeah, true.
Now, once the government says now we are going to compensate people, you imagine what comes in. You don't.
You, the Oponopondos, get to know about where the project is going to pass.
Even where we have our quarrel as a family, once people know that it is the Opono who is going to receive the money, then all your relatives will come in. The government has to pause. How many civil servants have dealt with those complaints before, those complications before, and so on and so forth? And there are many other things, both at the ministry, at the local level. Remember, we have decentralized. The local districts will ask you, what is our take? What is our take in? What is our interest in this? And so on. So those are some of the things I'm talking about, the internal malfeasance. Then you come the silo and rivalry. One of the reasons the evacuation of Karuma Power Dam has been partly between the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Trade, and Uganda Wildlife Authority. They refused that you cannot pass evacuation line through the national park. That's part of the reasons.
So the harmonization of the same government agencies
yes.
also contributed.
Then came bad manners. After the government secured right of way for the power line to come back, for the evacuation to come back to Kawanda, you remember, people started vandalizing
the infrastructure.
The pylons.
The pylons, yes.
They vandalized the pylons back to Kawanda. They vandalized the pylon to Toluyo. They vandalized the line to Tolira. I think until last year or early this year, you remember, the president now had to deploy the military to physically guard and have patrol along the lines. So there are many things. So those are things I'm talking about, internal malfeasance. And while we are doing that, we are encouraging industrialization. People are setting up steel factories, iron factories to process scrap. You remember
and
some of
the raw material is
yes, and the raw material
is at the
and the metals from the pylons. They go through Lira, they go through Soroti, through Ginger, and you find them
in Mbarara,
in Mbarara, or in Ginger, and in Mukono, and so on and so forth. So there are many things. But for me, I'm glad that finally, as we say, the adage goes, Rome was not built in one day, but wasn't built on the last day either.
So the end justifies the means.
Yes. So
I'll go to Honorable Lydia Wanyoto.
Now, just to close up with the Honorable, my sister Birete again is crying about the load shedding. I don't think the
and
situation...
And cost of electricity.
Yes, I don't think the situation of load shedding today is worse than 10 years ago. And one of the things...
maybe if I may put in this one, just for clarity.
Yes.
Technically, what she experiences, or many of us, is not load shedding. It is an outage. From what the little knowledge I have about the electricity sector.
No, you ran away from ESCOM, yeah.
Load shedding is where you don't have enough electricity to serve the country, and therefore you apportion. What we have is more than enough, but we are unable to deliver to Sarah because the infrastructure has a challenge here and there. So load shedding is like having 5 cups in a studio where you're 6. So only 5 can drink from the 5 cups at a time. Then one misses. Now that one person has been load shedded. But what we have is we have enough drinks in the flask for 6 people. However,
there are no cups.
We have 4 cups. So it doesn't mean that we are load shedding. You were just saying, hold on a little bit. Let us
I want to respond to the other 2 questions he said. About the cost, the affordability, the sustainability of those. The government, particularly the president, has been emphatic that progressively, and I think there's the tariffs are coming down so far, at least for the manufacturers, for the commercial. I think they've been evened out. I don't think they have a lot of complaints. What is remaining now is for us, the domestic consumers.
Who should we prioritize, because we are also the taxpayers?
But the industries, the commercial people are the ones who are generating revenue, which will eventually enable government probably even to give you subsidy. The other one, she's talking about the accessibility, particularly for the ordinary person. The government has extended the electricity, both the hydro, not just both, the hydro and the solar and the other mixtures. There is a problem in the country, and which we cannot answer effectively if we don't deal with the two issues. One, how will people earn money in their pockets, in their households, to afford electricity? Currently, if you travel around the country, you see cables passing over people's houses. They are unable, either they haven't upgraded their dwellings, their houses, they're in grass structures, they are in small little houses. They are unable to do domestic installation. And even where the government has given free or even subsidized domestic installation, people are unable to afford the running cost. How many of our people are able to pay, say, 5,000 minimum a month? If you don't earn money, as I come from Eastern Uganda, and I think in many rural parts of Uganda, there are people who wake up, millions of them, who wake up, and when you ask them, what are you doing? They say, we are just here.
You find them seated on Tiriri Road in the morning.
They don't expect to earn. Go along, and this is not just power, it's also on road infrastructure. You have seen where we put tarmac, and people are using it to dry cassava, dry rice, and their clothes, and so on and so forth. So we need to comprehensively deal with the economic issues, especially how can people earn sustainably so that they can buy and pay for these services.
On another at another opportunity, we will now tackle the how can we deal. Although one finds it strange that 38 years down the road, you as a government,
even God gave us all the 10 commandments over 2,000 years ago. Do we obey all the 10 commandments? We don't.
What a question.
And yet God is so powerful. He could make us obey all the 10 commandments, but he hasn't been able to.
Honorable Lydia Wanyoto. Let's look at the politics around the dam. For all these years since independence and even earlier, West Nile, for example, has not been known to be on the national grid. With the Karuma coming on board, everyone is talking about West Nile finally being on the national grid. We're also talking about unstable electricity connectivity in northern part of Uganda, which the Karuma Dam answers properly. And we are commissioning it 2 years before the next election.
But you know the Bachiga of Rukungura until they didn't have a tarmac. You hadn't seen a tarmac.
For Napondo, you're dragging me into an area and want to have a conversation over, but well, let's look at the politics around it and the hits, or should we say, if any, the misses from the NRM and as far as this project delivery is concerned. Over to you.
No, the one of the pillars of that is supposed to jumpstart the economy is energy, and among the infrastructure, normally since the last 15 years or so, one of them has been the energy sector. So I was also lucky to have attended the switching on of the West Nile about a month ago. I was in Nebi myself to witness that historic event by switching West Nile on the national grid. Now, the issue now is the supply and the connectivity and the phases. But before I talk about, so this is a project that is a commitment not only for the National Development Plan, but also the NRM manifesto. In every manifesto, for which, of course, OO has been part of it as a senior leader in our party, we have been talking about road infrastructure, energy, among one of those first pillars that are supposed to open up the economy of our country. Even this parish development model campaign is supposed to empower households to have small cottages, like if you have maybe a popcorn machine, a small saloon, those empowering the communities. They're supposed to jump onto the national grid, be able to survive in the communities. But also lighting is a big security matter. Because people who have their cows, who have their chicken in small communities, in darkness, they have been experiencing theft. So switching them onto the lighting, alongside other energy empowering systems like solar. Even solar has increased, the solar capabilities in Uganda has increased compared to the past. So while we're talking about energy through generation of power, but there's also the issue of solar. You find that there are so many people putting up panels. In Tororo, there's a big facility of panel I saw in terms of solar, but also that's an area that we are restarting as a country to be our industrial town and also maybe an industrial hub, because Tororo has cement and other factories that have both backward and forward linkages. But for me, this is very important, and if we are launching, maybe that's the good news. It has delayed, but finally it has come. There is delaying and never comes. But for me, actually, as I conclude on this comment, is I've been thinking about the big projects that our government undertakes, especially in these infrastructure projects like energy, like roads infrastructure, where there's also the bid of international contractors like the Chinese. The social, like now we have the issue of oil and gas, the building of the pipeline. We should revisit those contracts, because the issue of the community and the environment cannot be overlooked. It must be inbuilt within the contracts. If you are coming to settle in our country for 3, 4, 5 years, run a big project, there must be obviously a relationship inbuilt in law on how you are going to relate in terms of the environment, but also the communities. And what is it in it for the Ugandans in those communities? So this was something that you should do, brush away or speak lightly about. It's a very, very important matter that should be inbuilt. And Uganda is not unique. This is an international commitment. When people come to Uganda, the companies must commit to have what you'd call maybe social responsibility, not only to the environment and the people, but also to the people. How do they are going to relate? If you are going to see your children in Uganda, then you run away. There must be commitment. You cannot just say, these relationships are normal. No, they are not normal, because you are dealing with somebody who is not a Ugandan, and we have brought them to do work, but how are you relating with their people? So I think there is an element of the responsibility of our country. We should not allow abuse or taking advantage of our people because of the contracts that we undertake. If you are going to do a contract in Uganda, we must explain this. And it's not out of the way. I mean, I worked in international community. You commit in writing how you're going to relate with the communities where you're going to have the impact you're going to have in the social. So the children that have been seared without fathers who are committing themselves. I was working in the international community. On your contract, would remove percentage of your pay or the contract to look after the child you are leaving. You cannot board the plane. Let me be specific. You cannot board the plane from Addis Ababa as an international civil servant when you've left a family there. Ethiopia. I mean, I'm talking about an African country. You can't. Your passport, there's this clearance form on your passport if your contract has ended. They ask whether you have any, and people are alert. When you are leaving, they go and say you have left 2 children here. Go to Addis, you'll find out. And I'm telling you this because I've worked there, but I've also worked elsewhere in missions. So Uganda, I think this is whoever writes contracts for big international multinationals to come and do these big infrastructure projects, they should not cheat the component that handles issues of social relationships but also the communities and also environment and climate, because they have a big impact on our environment. When you read one of these contracts, they don't speak to the environment.
The good thing is engineers.
So we've just woken up recently because the oil and gas and the pipeline and whatever, but we need to revisit because the Uganda government owes the duty of responsibility and an obligation to the people and to the environment in Uganda. So it's not a joking matter. It's not.
Yeah, to be very fair, and indeed, Engineer Suga did mention it together with OO that we are learning, and from each of these projects we are picking a leaf. Now, Engineer Suga, who as a young man has been involved with Karuma, I think the next project really will have the requisite experience to ensure that he embeds more than the little feeble community development action plan and the wrap that you put into this contract. Now, let me, as we conclude the conversation around Karuma, I'll turn to you, Dr. Litho, and again, harping from where Honorable Wanyoto came from. We're talking about specific, tailor-made social interventions as a result of the disruption this otherwise beautiful project is going to have. We know for a fact that Karuma has bestowed onto the community 2 hospitals, one for the military, another one for the civilians. We know that a couple of schools have been built. We know that you've run scholarship funds for the girl child. We know that you have sunk boreholes in some communities. You have, also educated some communities in areas of financial literacy because they're going to start earning from where they never earned before. But we still get the sense that perhaps after commissioning, in fact, that's where the big tasks begin. Because one gets the sense that after commissioning, then you abandon and leave it for operation and maintenance with the teams there. But looks like the social components need to be followed through even after commissioning. What plan do we have in store for that?
First of all, I would like to take cognizance of what Honorable Anyota said, or the advice she's giving towards how we should handle bigger infrastructure projects and what we're actually providing for at the moment.
Or just to interrupt you a little bit, of course, our listeners ought to be informed that we are live on X Spaces. I've received very interesting comments coming in from those listening to us in the diaspora. My friend Joshua Okaisu is listening in from London. Mr. Tinka is listening to you off a radio being powered by batteries because I think he's under a blackout, and he was very happy that Sarah Vilete here has raised a concern with regard to outages. He says outages in areas of Ntinda, Nigeria, Chiwatsuri has become out of hand. But also in the studio, we are animated and energized by Star Cafe.
That's where also the high rate of illegal tapping of electricity is.
No. Okay. Wild allegation, but we'll let it pass. That's okay. A fun point.
I'll try to touch on the various things. Yes,
exactly.
Just quickly to update on the access. As a country, we are at 57% electricity access rate, whereby 38 is for off-grid renewable, and we have 19 for grid that we hope to improve. So some years back we're at 1%, so we've made significant progress using through the different government interventions, initiatives like rural electrification, like improving the transmission network, the different substations, the generation plan. So there's plan to improve, and like I would say, the godfather of communication has indicated, he really demonstrates he's been around, he knows what it's about, and true, the vandalism in the sector.
Godfather of communication, you said? You've missed a crucial prefix.
In government.
Godfather of miscommunication. Some would say those are not the words.
Yes, but my emphasis is the fact that he's aware and highlights the issues that the sector faces. Issues of vandalism have really affected access.
True.
And that is why some of those places face those challenges, not just for the transmission lines, but also for the distribution lines. People steal oil off transformers, they steal cables off distribution lines, then they go and vandalize the pylons to feed into the steel industries, and we're having conversations with the manufacturers around that, and so on and so forth. And we've even had cases of just malice. Someone decides to get a saw and just graze down
that should be regarded as
a wooden power
terrorism.
Yes, it is terrorism and sabotage of the sector. And going back to the issues that you would like me to address specifically the issues of the social responsibility during the project and after the project. Luckily, in this project, a lot of those considerations were put into place. But as you know, with budgets, sometimes we don't have sufficient. Actually, part of the government's component was the social responsibility, and we still have that available, subject to availability of funding.
Now, quickly, because we're about to end the hour, I'll turn to Engineer Nsubuga and ask him this final question as we wrap up this conversation. Let's not forget that the $1.7 billion is actually a concession loan from the Exim Bank of China. Now, the rubber hits the road. We are commissioning on Thursday, but what does that mean in as far as, one, the cost of electricity and our obligation as a country to pay back this loan? Does that mean that to have mortgaged the future of my daughter's daughter to pay this loan that you have acquired today? And yet we also know that this 600 megawatts is not going to be enough to run this country in the next 5 years. You'll be looking for other places to build dams and more financing, which you don't have at the moment. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Simon, and the gangsters for their submission. A tariff is what you see at the end. It's like when you go to buy a phone, you're most concerned about the cost of the phone. There's a lot that goes inside the phone, giving you battery life, giving you camera, giving you that. So then this is the most important part of it all, that at the end of that entire supply chain or that entire chain, somebody wants the lowest tariff. Now, a tariff is contributed by how much money you spend to generate the power, how much money you spend to transmit it, distribute it, and other international factors, exchange rate, cost of oil if you're producing using oil, among other things. And, revenue requirements. If you have borrowed, you need to pay back interest and the other. So, indeed, Karuma was funded through a loan, but Karuma is purely a public project. Government contributed an equity of 15% and then borrowed the other 85% from the Exim Bank of China. And that has to be paid back over a period. And the tariff of Karuma is 4.97 United States cents per kilowatt hour now, because we are still paying back.
Let's talk Ugandan shillings, Engineer Nsubuga.
We will need to convert that. Now you need to give me the current exchange rate. But for every unit,
850.
So for every unit you consume, you're having 0.497 times 3,850, something in the tune of 1,913. Okay, if I've done the calculation right, because it should have divided 4.97 by 100. And then multiply it by that. But I hope our listeners can do the calculation. But 4.97 is below what we are targeting, which is 5. Okay? And that is just in the first 10 years as we pay back the loan. It will lower to 2.7 in the next, between the 11th and the 15th year. And then it will go to 1.17 up to 38 years of the power purchase agreement. So Karuma is going to be one of the cheapest, like you see the ginger one. So we are aware that Karuma needs to contribute to the lowering of the tariff. And the tariff has been staggered in such a way that it must lower to benefit socio-economic development of this country. And not only Karuma, even Isimba, which is also another government project, 100% built by the taxpayers' money, is also below 5 cents and will continue to lower. Now, that is the target.
The good thing, Engineer Nsubuga, is that you and I are still here for a long time.
Absolutely.
So you into about 38 years. I don't think it's very far. I will be here with you. So, and where we are speaking from, these spaces, don't forget.
Simon.
So we will hold you personally responsible if you have lied to us this morning.
Simon, we have seen people younger dying before older people.
No.
So don't say
Engineer Nsubuga and I have an agreement that
but Simon, I need, before you get out of this, I want to comment quickly on what the gangsters raised. Karuma has many components. There's the hydropower plant.
Engineer Nsubuga, sorry to disrupt you. It's exactly 11 o'clock, a few minutes past 11 o'clock. Let's go in for a short break, but when we return, we'll certainly give you a few minutes to conclude.
Thank you very much, Simon.
Welcome back. It's the Capital Gang. My name is Simon Kasiate, standing in for the regular and almost permanent host of this program, Oscar Semoya Musokeu, who only gets absent twice in 2 years. And that's when I only managed to stand in for him. And then one wonders why he asked the audacity to ask people why they have overstayed in power. That said, in the studio, after this, I'm sure Oscar is going to fire me never to stand in for him, but that's the risk I'm willing to take. In the studio, in no particular order, Ofono Opondo, Lydia Wanyoto, Patricia Litho, Emmanuel Nsubuga, and Saravilete. I have removed all the titles and stripped them bare because today we're having conversations to educate and empower us as citizens in eco-measure. We were concluding with the Karuma question, and Engineer Nsubuga was taking the dice, after which I will allow you to take leave so that you can go to Karuma and prepare for the commissioning so that we hold you accountable.
Yeah, so thank you, Simon. But I need our listeners to understand one thing. The way Karuma was packaged is such a way that we are building a power plant, which is the 600 megawatt that we shall celebrate. We are evacuating it to support the grid. So we built transmission lines bringing power to the central business district, that is Karuma Kawanda. We built transmission lines taking power to West Nile, that's through Oluyo. We built a substation in Oluyo, and that supported the connection of West Nile to the grid. And we also built transmission lines taking power to the northern area. We have Lira substation, and that will help support to the power sub. That was the first.
Include that those power lines are the biggest capacity.
They are the biggest capacities. The first 400 kV, 2 lines, Karuma Oluyo, Karuma Kawanda, the first of their nature. The first 400 kV substation in Kawanda and Karuma, those are first of their nature. And we hope to build another 400 kV substation on Oluyo to support the 132 that were built under this project. So this project did not only build a power plant, it built transmission lines, the biggest that we've ever had, and substations.
Yes.
Now, it was not only packaged as purely an engineering project. We had corporate social responsibility in the contract. Yeah. It is written in the contract itself that the contractor shall provide corporate social responsibility in terms of schools, hospitals, even an orphan study fund.
Wow.
So Masindi Barracks Health Center 4 was done by this project. The Chenyi General Hospital, which is also an health center 4, was done by this project. Amaji Primary School was refurbished under this project. And there's an orphan study fund that was put by the contractor, and money was equally distributed to Oyam, Chiriandongo, and Moya to support with orphans within the region. So some of these children that you're talking about who are sad in the process could benefit from this fund.
Are they orphans?
Well,
we don't know whether their fathers are alive, but even if they are not, it's a study fund. So the local government have the responsibility.
A very final one.
Yes.
Our neighbors
yes.
in Ethiopia are building the Grand Renaissance Dam on almost the same river for thousands of megawatts. We have been told of one that has never kicked off in DRC, or that would power perhaps much of sub-Saharan Africa. Why do we settle for 600 megawatts, 200 megawatts? Is it that we have no potential on the Nile to build one project that runs thousands of megawatts?
First of all, we increased this capacity from 200 to 600. So we tripled it by going underground. But if you look at the size of the Blue Nile compared to the White Nile, they are so different. That's why you see that there's an international challenge between certain countries on how the Blue Nile must be used. So the White Nile is a bit smaller than the Blue Nile, is much bigger. That's the reason why they can build a Grand Renaissance. Thank you.
Paint for us a picture very finally of what Thursday's event is going to look like. Maybe that you could share with Litho as you say bye to our listeners.
Thursday is an amazing day. We expect His Excellency the President to honor the occasion, and as chief guest, we've invited a number of guests, including the local communities, to come and celebrate this humongous achievement. Yes, it has delayed, but for a country like ours, this is very, very important, and I think Dr. Litho can speak more to this.
Dr. Litho, as you say bye to our listeners.
Oh yes, really. As I conclude, earlier doctor asked me the difference between Karuma, the bridge, and Karuma, the hydropower project. So for me, as the last word, I would like to make that straight. We have
one is closed, another one is being commissioned.
Yes, Minister of Works is responsible for the bridge, so it is refurbishing the bridge. While the Karuma hydropower project, an interconnection project, we are commissioning the largest hydro underground power project in Uganda, in Africa, 14th in the world of that technology.
So are you saying that beyond just what it is in terms of an architectural marvel, it's also a touristic attraction? Are you also having elements?
Yes. We have amazing elements. We have the tunnel, we have the falls, the river, and of course we are near the park. So it's one package in all.
Dr. Litho, Engineer Nsubuga, we want to thank you for taking time off your very busy schedule to come and be with us here on the Capital Gang. Now, the Capital Gang is going into its real element where we don't think you are qualified now. For example, to talk about Honorable Norbert Mao's electoral reforms that he presented before.
Thank you.
And the fact that we had a tweet coming out last evening, coming in from one of those people that we thought would be on the ballot for 2026, who clearly has told us that the Almighty God has guided
He may
that
change.
he should concentrate on the army first, and he therefore endorses President Yoweri Museveni for the presidency of this country in 2026. And guess what? Everyone is saying, wow, breaking news, the Pope is finally Catholic. Now, Ofono Opondo. No.
Supposing he changes his mind again.
Much expected. But I think let's go down here properly. Let me start with Dr. Virete. The electoral reforms. Honorable Norbert Mao, who is the president of the Democratic Party, but recently conscripted into the National Resistance Movement as a Minister for Justice, did present some recommendations, cabinet, among which they actually indicate that it's becoming extremely expensive to run elections in this country. And maybe the 450-something of you current members of parliament could choose the next president, and many other proposals. From an overview point of view, what's your take? Do you think he has some salt in his paper?
Well, Honorable Norbert Mao indeed has tabled a range of reforms. Constitutional, he says now he has tabled cabinet. Constitutional and electoral reforms. In his latest media appearance, I think on Thursday, he said he has tabled them to cabinet. These proposals include indeed the parliamentary system where MPs would elect a president, and it affects a range of articles in the Constitution, including Article 1, 68 on voting, and 103 on the president being elected through adult suffrage. It presents challenges in its own way to say that MPs who have really less trust, especially these current MPs, less trust from the people, to say that they take on that power as enshrined in Article 1 of the people to elect their leaders at all levels in free and fair credible elections, that we cede this power to a few individuals, most of them when their elections are challenged in court. They are, yes, no, why are you laughing? I'm talking about facts. When some MPs are challenged in court, we hear of rigging, we hear of ballot stuffing, we hear of academic issues. So meaning that even to be an MP alone, there are a lot of issues that are embedded there, even before
it's
they
no longer a badge of honor.
Yes.
Now you are OHT, and we know what connotations around it.
Yes. So that is very problematic, and I hope that this proposal will not find its way on the floor of the House. I think it would be good to have a president with a mandate of the people. And even if we were to go the parliamentary system, it would be good to have a parliamentary system where you have, the president also being tested, like in South Africa, which is a parliamentary republic. Ramaphosa is tested through the party, through the ballot, and the percentage he gets are the number of MPs he will nominate.
How different
or
is
get
it
into
from
the
here?
House.
Isn't our president tested through exactly the same channels? Isn't he tested from primaries? As we can see, he's already whizzing himself through the primaries. He's already got.
I am comfortable with the current state, the way we elect the president and the parliament. And I think our level of democracy has not reached that where you cede power to MPs. These MPs should be of a high caliber for people to cede that power that they elect their president. Secondly, we have, yes, this is my opinion.
Dr. Saro,
secondly, we have a constitution that is top heavy in terms of a president. 46 articles in the constitution talk of presidential powers, including powers to sign death warrants. This is important power that should come from the people. If we were to have a president who is not elected by the people, we should take away some of these powers, because what is the legitimacy of that indirect president to exercise so much power in a country?
Wow.
there will be no basis for that. So we need also to overhaul the constitution and reduce the powers of a president who comes through a parliamentary system as compared to a president who is elected by all the people or majority people.
Dr. Bidere, you make very, very incredible submissions and also have pleasantly surprised me to the extent that I expected you would flatly say no to these proposals and give no alternatives. But I'm glad, even as you disagree, you're saying, okay, if we must go that direction, then at least let's
take away the power.
Double down on some
Yes.
of these things. Now that's what they call a basis for logical and civil conversation, which I think Honorable Mao is trying to put on the table. But I'll turn to the NRM mouthpiece in every sense of the word, but also Executive Director of the Government Media Center. Ofonopono, what exactly is the fascination for these proposals that may not necessarily be as a result of the several electoral cycles we've had, where we've had electoral observation missions putting in place certain recommendations for electoral reforms, and now we are seeing majority of these being disregarded, and we're seeing proposals such as a president being elected not by universal adult suffrage but by a cabal of a few, and to use Dr. Sarah's own words, discreditable individuals called members of parliament.
First of all, we should never allow foreigners, if we are serious, to define for us how our politics should be run. So for me, I disabuse all those recommendations by election observers, particularly the foreign ones. I disabuse. I don't accept that they should be the ones to tell us how our elections, how our governance should be.
Is Mao
Ofonopono.
a foreigner?
No.
Mr. Ofonopono, the Commonwealth Observer Mission, which is normally the biggest observer mission here, usually led by an African. I mean, we've seen former presidents from African countries leading Commonwealth Observer Missions. You want to say that does not hold
I am saying I disagree. What is common about the Commonwealth? Is it common only because they are being exploited by the British?
Common exploit.
Yes. So to that extent, I don't accept. Ugandans should define and determine how our rules should be, including electoral rules. I agree that there are elements of our elections that require reforming: administrative, legal, and constitutional. I am not privy to what Honorable Mao says through a newspaper interview that has presented to Cabinet. By my job, I will wait when that is tabled before Cabinet, and the leader of Cabinet, the President, through the head of public service, says this is what Cabinet is considering and these are the talking points. So I'm not privy to what Honorable Mao has presented. But let us take from the face value of what he said in the newspapers. Some have merit. Others, in my view, don't have merit. From the standpoint, the ideological standpoint of the NRM, which has been repeated publicly by the President, first point of the NRM 10-point program, the initial one, was a restoration of democracy. And the President and all of us have been saying we need to give and entrench democratic rights to Ugandans. Universal election of the President has been one of the core. In my view,
True.
there is no reasonable excuse to move away from universal adult suffrage for the President.
Someone actually just texted me and he says, let Museveni continue rigging elections and declare himself victor, but let him leave us at least that right to vote for the president that we want. Gives us satisfaction.
Just like there is no reasonable excuse to move away from universal adult suffrage election for the members of parliament to any other, which I have seen from the newspaper. Honorable Mao is saying he wants a proportional representation, that we vote for parties, and based on the number of votes each party has got, they then are allocated seats in parliament. That is an old story the Democratic Party, by the way, since Ben Kiwanuka has been trying to canvass support for, they have never succeeded. I suspect Honorable Mao, because this has been his talking point since he became president, that we should go, according to him, it will give fairness to representation to the votes that are not, and so on and so forth. But it has a recipe for disaster. In the NRM, when we were making the NRM constitution, by the way, 2003, there were proposals, for example, that NRM members of parliament, the primaries, there should be element of vetting by a committee at the district. And we rejected it. We said, supposing you have a bad committee at the district, they don't want to phone opondo, and they throw you out. And therefore, we decided to go for voting primaries by the members. Initially, actually, we had electoral college voting for members, for the primaries of NRM, for the members of for the NRM primaries. We threw that out. I think that was 2015.
Yes.
2015. We removed it and we said no. Every registered party member who's of 18 years old and above and is a registered voter with the National Electoral Commission should vote for the NRM candidate in the primaries. So by that practice, NRM cannot go back and say remove universal suffrage for either electing members of parliament or the president. But anyway, now let me just conclude with this. When those proposals go to cabinet, assuming there are 60 of them, most likely, cabinet will set up a subcommittee to have a detailed look at the proposals from the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. That committee probably will incorporate some legal, constitutional, and political experts and people of good wisdom.
Like Ofonopond.
As a result of that, probably a white paper will come out through cabinet. By the end of it, majority of them could be shaded off. I don't know which one cabinet will agree on. Now, it is what cabinet agrees on
that will go to parliament.
That will go to parliament by way of a bill. It is at that point that me as a spokesperson will speak definitively. As of now, it is really wrong. But as a concept, yes, it is good to bring some administrative reforms. It is good to bring legal reforms. I'm not so sure if we have enough time, knowing that the Electoral Commission has published its roadmap and it says that nominations for national elections start in September next year. Going by our parliamentary calendar, procedure, and sluggishness, yes, where there's a will, there is a way. But I am not so sure that constitutional amendments, yes, we can come overnight and pass them. Yes, that's okay. But what we generate unnecessary controversy, probably controversy is what fuels politics. But in my considered view, even without legal reforms, if we do administrative reforms and enforce good manners, we can still have a good election. And what am I talking about good manners? For example, what are the complaints during the election? There are three main complaints. One, excessive use of money. I don't think you need a lot of legislation for people not to bribe. Already bribery is an offense in the country, let alone bribing on the election. Two, interference by forces outside the electoral commission. Like executive forces, like we overzealous government people, overzealous party people. Do you need a law? Because already the law says if Ofono is not an election official, he should not handle any aspect of the election except nominating a candidate
and voting for them.
And voting or being an agent of a candidate. So what else would Ofono do? You don't need a law. If Ofono comes to a polling station and intimidates somebody, comes with a whip to beat up somebody, the police should arrest Ofono. You don't need a law. You don't need a law for that one. No, all you need to do is ensure that the police can stand its ground. Yes. The third one is fiddling with the process of election by election officials. For example, if voting has ended, and votes have been counted at a polling station, and results have been declared at that polling station, we expect the election officials to transmit the results as is declared, to where it is going to be tallied at the district or at the national level. If somebody fiddles with those results by way of addition and subtraction, do you need another law for that one? All you need to ensure is that this person who is transmitting the election, maybe we need, but it is now provided for. If we provided equipment, for example, as soon as election results are declared, then it is forwarded instantly, either by way of telephone or by way of SMS or whatever it is, so that we are sure that the result which is received at the district is the result which the polling station has, and there's a quick way of transmission and also verification. But what we are having currently is that somebody can go to a tally center, an agent of a candidate, sometimes the candidates themselves, they either intimidate or even compromise an election officials, because the law currently says, for example, that once the returning officer at the district has declared Ofono as duly elected, no other person, and that was made for good purpose, so that nobody at the National Electoral Commission should change that result. But what we are having now is that there are returning officers who will declare Ofono even when he knows Ofono doesn't have the requisite result, because he knows or she knows. You remember the case of Wakiso and others, because even Rovaka here, the case of Katongole Singh, which went to court, at the Kasibanta, I think, you remember, and she declared somebody who has given them money, knowing that even the chairman of the Electoral Commission cannot undo
the declaration.
The declaration, and they say you can fight it out in court. Now that one you don't need the law. You actually need effective administrative supervision.
Ofono Pondo, just before we proceed on that, and you will allow us just 5 minutes to carry out what you are trying to run away from doing, although I suspect you do it all the time, rumor mongering. A fly on the wall seems to suggest that these electoral reforms, it's a jacket, but the real substance in there is that there is a certain candidate at a certain time T who your party or your may not necessarily feel comfortable subjecting to an election of universal adult suffrage. And as such, this 2026 will go through, because you have a strong candidate who has been tested through many elections. But he who comes after him, who you want to bring after him, cannot be risked on a ballot for universal adult suffrage. And you can connect the dots. When I mentioned the tweet made last evening, it is not accidental that someone is endorsing another for now, and that these electoral reforms may take place after 2026.
No. When the proposals come, I'm saying I am not privy to what Mao says he has. Now, when matters go to cabinet, that cabinet has 82 people.
Did you hear the part where I said let's rumor monger?
No. When those proposals go to cabinet, and particularly when the debate starts in cabinet, it is unlikely that we shall not know the actual proposals. At that point, the debate will ensue. It is possible that the NRM group may shift its position from universal adult suffrage for election of the president and the members of parliament and so on to a new proposal. I can't speak for that until
it happens.
That happens. Now, don't talk about rumors. People have said President Museveni is now 80, which he celebrated the other day.
Openly.
Today, by the way, I can refer you to my column. I actually said the president has done so well, it has done so well. But surely, in the next 5 years, 85-year-old, the toll would be very visible.
Evident.
Now, and people have said this, he may not be willing to subject himself to running around the country. That can all be okay. I am saying I am not privy to that decision. But when that decision is made, and made particularly by my party and the cabinet which I serve, I only have two choices.
Quit.
Either to agree with that new situation
Or quit.
and speak for it, or leave government, or not speak for it. I can remain in government but not speak for it. And let me just give you an example. Let me just give you an example.
The godfather of
Let me just give you an example. In 2000, I did not agree with the outcome of the proposal by Chankwanzi that we should change to multi-party. But once neck of end of the movement voted, I had no choice. I went and canvassed support. Actually, I was the deputy chairperson of the referendum committee from the NRM. Two, when we did not agree with lifting term limits in the secretariat, I was the director of information at the secretariat.
You didn't agree?
The position of the movement secretariat in 2003 was that we keep the term limit. You can go and check the records. However, when we went to Chankwanzi retreat, and NEC, which had about 700 people, outvoted the position of the secretariat and said, let us lift the presidential term limit. We as officers of the secretariat, we don't work for ourselves. We work for the NEC. And now we work for the membership of the party. Once the organs of the party has taken the position, my disagreement doesn't count. I have to go and speak for the new position of the party. And so
they call it collective responsibility.
Collective responsibility.
But that said, it's about 30 minutes to the top of the hour, Mr. Ofonopondo,
Yes.
the grandfather of communication. Some may put the word miscommunication as a prefix. But
Yes.
when we return, we'll have more conversation around the issue and the proposals. And of course, you know that Honorable Wanyoto has not weighed in onto that, and she deserves to
And
be heard.
she's a member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRA. The ones who are going to
Welcome back. It's the Capital Gang here on 91.3 Capital FM. My name is Simon Kasiate, sitting in for the regular and perhaps everlasting host of this program, Oscar Samoya Msoke, who's not in. He'll probably be in next weekend and until 2027 when I next come back. In the studio, Sarah Birete, Lydia Wanyoto, and Ofonopondo. The conversation on the table is the proposed electoral reforms by the Minister of Justice that will possibly find their way to cabinet and down the line into parliament and possibly become law. All of them, half of them, one of them, whichever. The process we must trust. Lydia, as a senior member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM, and these proposals coming in from an adopted child to the NRM, who I think is a prized child, considering that he's the president of a rival political party, the Democratic Party, but he serves in your government. Just from the onset, are you excited about what you've heard these developments are leading to?
No, of course I cannot be excited. First of all, I've had an opportunity to meet Mao on a talk show, and I asked him a straight question: that did you post that those proposals as a Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs, as a citizen of Uganda in your own right, or as a president of the Democratic Party? And certainly it was not because he's a Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs. So I told him, because there is the issue of collective responsibility, and I want to really urge Ugandans, if you position yourself as a national leader, you must take collective responsibility. You cannot choose to be what you want conveniently at any time. So I've told Mao, now that you're Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs and you've accepted to be part
of the government.
Collective responsibility of Uganda. Just be that for now. You cannot wake up in the morning and be the political head of the Electoral Commission, which is the constitutional body that runs elections, and endorse for them to release a national roadmap. Then elections are not a cup of tea. Our country has not suffered because we lack food, has not suffered because we lack sunshine or rain seasons.
Bad weather.
We have suffered as a country because of fixing the question of governance. So if you're in a position of leadership, know that we look up to you to fix what Uganda has lacked since independence, and that's governance. So when you have a national roadmap on your table and you're the political head, and the clock is ticking every other day, as we speak today, on the calendar of the Electoral Commission, the activities that have not been able to be done because they didn't get the money or the resources they needed. So if I was in his position, I would really be now campaigning to deliver the roadmap of the Electoral Commission, because he's the political head. Why am I saying this? At least let him make sure that the roadmap of the Electoral Commission is delivered at least 80%, so that we say during his time as the political head of the Electoral Commission, Uganda was able to, because governance is a building block, it's a step by step, so it's a process. So we say, during his time, compared to 2021, we're able to achieve this and that as a positive trend to a better electoral process. But now this is diversionary. You have Electoral Commission calendar that's running. They have challenges. You leave that, you begin to bring us another list of other things within the same calendar. What are you saying? And these proposals he posted were in the comfort of, I don't know whether his bedroom or his sitting room, I don't know, but we're not in the cabinet. These proposals have not seen
the light of day.
The light of cabinet. We do not want to have Ugandans who have advantage of having political position in our country take Ugandans for a joke. It's not fair. I've told him this, I'm repeating this because I do not think we deserve this. He has to choose whether he wants to remain an activist on posts or he wants to be a minister for justice and delivers what he has tabled before cabinet and what he has tabled before parliament. But also make a disclaimer. At least make a discussion. Because people are saying he tabled. I have information he has not tabled anything before cabinet. And I asked him, it's not because I'm speculating. So for me, I want to really request people, especially of our generation, if you've been given a responsibility, an opportunity to serve the country, do it. Don't be populist. Don't politic. Don't take Ugandans for granted. It's not fair.
Wow.
It's not fair.
Dr. Birete, it's clear.
Now you are talking about, with the president to be elected in parliament or outside parliament. That debate, why is it there now? Because the calendar of the Electoral Commission is against already a constitutional arrangement and legal. The Presidential Elections Act has not been repealed, to the best of my knowledge. And that's upon which the Electoral Commission has rolled out a roadmap. And the leader of the Electoral Commission politically is the Minister for Justice and Constitutional Affairs. So what was the intention of this post? Now, the timing, the intention, and the money. For each of those proposals you see, they have huge budgetary implications, constitutional amendments, but also repealing acts of parliament, because we have an Parliamentary Elections Act on the table, which is now running. Nominations of members of parliament is 17th and I think 16th of 2025. Look, what's the date today? What's the countdown? You tell us. Today is what?
21st of September.
So we have less than a year to the nominations, and you have a minister in charge not talking about this or pushing to support the Electoral Commission. He's bringing another list, another conversation on the post, not in the cabinet, not in the parliament, not even in the caucus, because now he's a member of the NRM caucus because he is in the ruling party. So for me, I don't know whether I am in the wrong place, but we Ugandans of our time, we should not treat some of these issues as a cup of tea. And I've said before, our country has not lacked good weather, has not lacked good agriculture. Actually, as a matter of fact, we can live and eat with it just by your courtyard because we have good weather. We have only lacked good leaders and good governance. Since 1986, Ugandans have been patient and supporting the president because they thought and we hope that because of his leadership, we'll be able to fix that we have lacked in the past. When we fix government, Uganda will take off like an electric, we'll take off like an electric lift. So we do not want jokers in the spaces of our governance. I'm very open about this because I do not think that we should be debating the post of the minister. And actually, he told me it's not from cabinet. So I think he posted as an individual. Now we have a mix. Are we debating a post of a minister, of a president of a party, or an activist, or a Ugandan? And is that fair? Is it fair for us as a country? I think let's table the calendar of the Electoral Commission.
And go by that.
And where they don't have money, let's push for money. Where they don't have money, because one of the activities is civic education and awareness about the electoral processes. The civil society people are here. If you can mobilize resources, let us go down to the grassroots and mobilize Ugandans. If you look at the results of the electoral reports of 2021, the voter turnout is pathetic. We must mobilize Ugandans to elect leaders so that we do not do post-mortem. That should be what's on our table
Perhaps,
now.
Maybe
The variance between the population of Uganda who elect at the age of 18 and those that actually turn out to vote. I'm even speaking about my own party. Knows this very well. I've been putting a question. Let me tell you one reason why I'm speaking like this. In our our register of the NRM, we have, as of today, 18 million people. But even in 2021, we would like to see that gap closed, not only for NRM or other parties, but also let Ugandans.
So you have
unless we are failing. My interest
voters,
now,
but the actual voters could be less than 6.
Yeah, you see, Chagulanyi, despite the 1 million he rigged, he got about 3 million. Now the president got less than 6 million. So where is the variance of these Ugandans? So it's upon all of us to realize that if we chose to elect Ugandans by universal suffrage, we must make sure it works for Ugandans.
We are there.
Otherwise, if we don't do that, there is a lie somewhere that we say we go universal suffrage, and out of the 18 million eligible Ugandans, only 5 million vote. And we should be bothered.
Where the other 13?
Why the other 13 do not come out to vote?
Really
That's what a leader must be doing now. To persuade, to convince the other variants to be able to agree that it's the best thing to do is that Ugandans must turn out to vote. In other developed countries, if you do not vote for a leader, because the systems work there, the IT works there, you will not board a public bus, you will not use a public hospital because you didn't choose the leader to fix those things for you.
Wow.
Just your card alone must swipe.
So that you have the locus standi to be able to enjoy.
To call those people to account that, I voted the OO, he has not fixed the road for me, he has not allocated, therefore you have it. But you cannot keep lamenting
when you're not voting. So
who is answering the question of the leaders if we do not turn out to vote? So I'm just giving one example that we must be able to fix the variance issue. And that's where the campaign should go, to convince Ugandans. So that we are able to say, okay, these are the people we chose, but we own the leadership that we have. What we have today does not speak to the vote difference that we saw in 2021. So let's answer some basic questions to clean up 2021 elections so that we have a better 2026. And if this other conversation of what you have brought on the table today should work, it should be like a side, in the big meetings of the UN or other forums, there's the main menu or the main meeting, but then there are side events.
And then there are
so let's be explaining which one is the main and which one the side. Let's have the side events, but the main issue now is the roadmap of the Electoral Commission, because it has been tabled before the constitutional forums. That is my take, and it's personal. I am not saying it because I'm a member of the NRM High Command, no. I'm saying because I'm a citizen that has grown up yearning to have leaders that do not take people for granted.
Wow. Dr. Birete, it's clear that the NRM how do I put it, has, without a fear of contradiction and leaving no chance for debate, has clearly disowned what we thought Honorable Norbert Mao had put on the table as part of the workings of the NRM. But the look on your face seems to suggest that Ofono Pond and Honorable Nyoto here are doing what they do best. Their national sport is creating red herrings, smoke screens, and appearing like they don't agree.
Simon, don't get me wrong. For me, I want the forums that are there to be used.
Yes,
the right forum.
I'm looking at, Simon,
the forum.
Sarah, your interpretation.
What I'm looking at is just, uncoordinated troops in the field.
But headed the same direction.
I don't know, because for me, Honorable Mao showed the Republic of Uganda a memorandum with the NRM, a basis of which he joined cabinet. These are officials of NRM. In that MOU, there were these issues he's talking about, constitution and electoral reforms in preparation for a transition. Some of us didn't believe he would achieve what he showed us, and we told him. But that MOU assumes that he is now, until 2026, part of NRM. I see OO wants to intervene.
I will stop him, don't worry.
Yes.
You have my protection.
Yes. So for me as a citizen and actor on governance, that MOU assumes that he's part of NRM for this period of the MOU. So when he speaks, Mao has 3 platforms. One, he has a right as a citizen, to propose. Also as a minister, line minister for constitution and electoral reforms, he can initiate. Then he takes to cabinet. My view is that maybe he has initiated. And by yesterday he said he has taken to cabinet. I was on a platform with the Honorable Wanyoto and Mao on Wednesday. He had not by then taken to cabinet, and he said so. But the next day,
on Monday.
I don't know. He could have submitted to the secretary for scheduling. I don't know what he has done. So the next day, he says he has taken. So that is their issue. Me as an actor now, I'm saying that is now their internal issue. But as civil society, we have been advocating for reforms, starting from 2011. Then 2016, 2014, the compact for free and fair elections. Even in our consultations now, ahead of 2026, we have been calling for reforms. There are a number of electoral reforms that Honorable Mao, together with the head of NRM, have talked about. Technology. In 2016, the Supreme Court, in the Amama Mbaba's petition, observed that there is no legal framework for use of technology in elections in this country. We have been using technology in the last 2 elections, but there is no legal framework. And among the directives they gave with a timeline was that the government enacts a framework for use of technology in elections. 8 years down the road, we do not have these regulations for use of technology in elections. Electoral Commission is planning an election based on partly technology, although it's not full a digital election. The president said a week ago that we should use more technology in our elections. Norbert Mao is saying the same. So, where is the conversation getting lost? I'm just speaking one issue of technology. The president did say that there should be use of technology, and where technology fails, the voting should be stopped. He's on record. I don't know what Ofonopondo is opposing, but he will make his submission. So, coming back to the other proposals, other than technology, there are issues on, public officials who engage in partisan politics during campaigns. Also a directive coming from the Supreme Court that has not been enacted. And Supreme Court ordered for a clear punishment of these people. We have been calling for regulation of money in elections. It has also not happened. And these are some of the issues that Honorable Norbert Mao has also fronted. So the question is, do we have enough time for reforms ahead of 2026 elections? The Supreme Court had guided that in the first 2 years of a parliament, life of a parliament, reforms should happen then, so that there is enough time to integrate these reforms and implement them.
For the next cycle.
Yes, but we are now remaining with 1 year to nominations. This government has not tabled any reforms, and we need reforms to improve our elections, including the role of security in elections. The disruption caused by security forces in our elections.
So Sarah, is it unfair for someone to say, well, better late than never?
Us from civil society, we are saying better late than never, because we need reforms, and we are on a campaign led by the NGO Forum calling for reforms.
But it looks like these reforms may be dead on arrival from at least the submissions we've had from the NRM side. They don't represent what the NRM would love to. But, well, like you said, we need the reforms. Let's see where they come from and in what nature. Upon we have 5 minutes to the end of the program, and I will take a two detable. So we'll go around the table as we conclude on this subject matter.
Well,
I also asked an ad, I talk about elections. The Uganda Law Society is going to have an election for the executive of their leadership as a society, as a legal society. So it's taking quite some interesting shape in terms of the kind of menu from which they are going to choose their presidency. You may wish to say a word or two about that.
For avoidance of doubt, let me state, I am not privy to what Norbert Mao claims in a newspaper article that are electoral reform proposals he has submitted to whomsoever. Honorable Didi Onyebdu has been categorical and said, talks to him. Me, I haven't talked to Mao. If I talked to Mao like Didi has, I would have said so. But I think the beauty, call him next Saturday and we ask him here, what are his proposals? Let him read from 1 to Z and where he has taken them. Secondly, ministers, as far as I know, not individual ministers are spokespersons of the cabinet. So Mao has no local standard to speak.
Who is the spokesperson of the cabinet?
Minister of Information.
Yes, and the president.
Oh.
Now, you don't say, I intend to submit this or I have submitted. That's not how cabinet works. Otherwise, everybody would be saying what they want. But that's for...
Forgive him. He's He's a newcomer.
That's for the prime minister and the president, if he's out of order, to call him to order and so on and so forth. 3, I have said, the method of cabinet, when a minister is given authority or initiates, they take to cabinet. They are scheduled by the head of service when to present. Usually there's something we call a cabinet paper.
Yes.
No. A cabinet paper. You write the minister writes a cabinet paper.
What comes out of cabinet is the white paper.
Yes.
What
it may just be a resolution. Sometimes they can be a white paper. Now, once cabinet gives you authority, then you can go and speak to it publicly on what cabinet has agreed to. But my guess is that Honorable Mao could, is in my view, is in a catch-22 situation. Where he came from, they are doubting him. Probably where he is, he doesn't
no
feel.
one trusts him.
He doesn't feel sufficiently
appreciated.
That what he came for, maybe he can deliver. But remember, this is not different from the situation we were in 1994-96, with the former leader of the Democratic Party,
Paul Kawanga,
who was also in the cabinet of Uganda. You remember?
And later became a presidential
yes, you remember throughout the CA, he took a tangent different from what the NRM at the time was saying. You can go and check the answer of the CA, how he debated.
I remember.
When we completed CA, actually, before the promulgation of the Constitution, he jumped ship and announced that he was going to run for president and resigned as Minister of Public Service and Deputy Prime Minister. I don't think Mao is going that direction. I will want to talk to him when he returns. what is motivating him. But let me just put a rider. Yes, the government of Uganda is not run according to the MOU between the Mao and President Museveni, or even between the Mao and the NRM. The government of Uganda is run according to the constitution, the laws, and endorsed policy of government. And
which
endorsed
may
by Parliament.
include the MOU.
No. By the cabinet, and usually policies go to Parliament for resolution. Now,
the MOU is a basis for him to be in NRM.
No. While Mao is cooperating with NRM, I don't think it is reasonable for him to expect that he will drive NRM. And that NRM will move on his will.
Did you say cooperating or co-parenting or cohabiting? I mean, we need to be very sure.
He is cooperating with NRM. Mao is the one cooperating with NRM. No, Honorable Mao is cooperating with NRM. But I think it would be too much of expectation on his side.
To think that his whims and fancies can carry the day.
That is the one going to run the NRM agenda.
In other words,
if he has good ideas,
let him be humble about it and present them formally.
Let him present
the right forums
to the forum where he belongs, and also that's so with good manners and decorum. And then,
in other words, let me put it in local speak. Yes. Norbert Mao should know that Siwach Taronyo Ngawaroza, in as far as the grand scheme of things is concerned.
His honorable minister, I expect him to be
Munene.
It's exactly some 2 minutes past the hour of midday here on the 21st day of September 2024. It comes to the end of the Capital Gang, which I am pleased to have hosted this morning. And I want to thank the panelists that have joined us this morning, who include, are not limited to Ofono Pondo, Lydia Wanyoto, Sarah Birete, and of course the two officials who came in from the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development that was speaking about the commissioning of the Karuma hydropower station, the biggest civil works project that this country has had, only rivaled by the Uganda Railway. In the studio, we've had the pleasure of enjoying ourselves with Star Cafe, which is always nourishing and it's always served in yellow cups. And everyone must have had a good taste of it.
You are colorblind. Sarah's cup is actually white.
I haven't seen her cup. And then, of course, this program, just beyond the frequency of 91.3, also runs on X Spaces. And we're glad that many of you have had the opportunity to listen to us from wherever it is. We can only wish you the very best of what the weekend has. All the best. God bless you. Till next time, it's a wrap.